Hello, everyone, and welcome to David and Jeff's Survivor Podcast. I'm David, and with me, as always, is
Jeff.
How are you doing today, Jeff?
I'm wonderful. How are you today, David?
I'm doing great. Survivor this past week. I'm excited to talk about it, but this season we're having a topic for every podcast, and today's topic is conflict and fights. And we know in 30 seasons, 31 now, there have been plenty of fights and conflicts. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. This might have been, of all the top 10 lists we've done, this might be my longest short list. I always kind of run through the seasons and make a short list of potential nominees, and there were quite a few. There's one almost every season, and a couple seasons with multiple.
So yeah, we're going to have a top 10 list all about the top 10 Survivor fights. We're going to be having a Survivor draft with 20 of the most volatile people to ever play Survivor. And Jeff and I will each get to choose our lethal combination of players for our tribe.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll be talking all about the past, present of Survivor and how that relates to fights and conflict. But before we get any further, we have to talk about our sponsor this year, Jeff.
Of course. We can't forget to mention the always delicious Zoe's Lobster Shack.
Zoe's Lobster Shack, the one and only place to get fresh lobster for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Anytime you want it, go to Zoe's Lobster Shack, and she will prepare the ultimate feast for you and all of your friends and family. And we know that survivors love Zoe's Lobster Shack as well. And we had some of the more controversial players give us some testimonies of what they thought of Zoe's Lobster Shack.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, one Ted Rogers Jr. said that he was 150 to 200% satisfied with his meal at Zoe's Lobster Shack, which I don't know if you know much about percentages, David, but that's got to be pretty good.
That is pretty good, I think. And, Alicia Calloway, also known for Big Fight, said this: "I'll wave my finger in your face if you don't think this is the best restaurant on the beach." So both Alicia and Ted very satisfied with Zoe's Lobster Shack, and we encourage you to check it out as well. Zoe's Lobster Shack. The phone number, if you ever want to call and make a reservation, they're usually pretty busy, so you need to call well in advance, is 1-555 Lobster Shack.
That's very helpful. Thank you, David.
Yeah. Now, you may realize that Lobster Shack is more letters than numbers in a phone number, and you just have to take out the vowels.
You have to take out the vowels and some of the consonants, too.
Yeah. But anyways, always be sure to go and get your meals from Zoe's Lobster Shack. Whether you're fighting or at peace, all are welcome. So, let's get on now that we had our obligatory sponsorship ad. Let's talk about our top 10 list, our top 10 Survivor fights. Now, this is a very loose category, and when going through it, I found that I wanted to highlight certain fights over others. So for me, I did my list solely on entertainment value. So ones that I enjoyed watching, maybe there's some humor in it. So you will not find very depressing ones with me. However, Jeff, you probably had a completely different way of ranking these.
Well, I don't know. I think I kind of did my rankings with like a culmination of a bunch of different things. So there's a little bit of entertainment value, a little bit of legacy, a little bit of, kind of severity of fight.
Yes.
So I think that I kind of added all of those together. I don't know. We'll see how it ends up shaking out. I'm excited to see what you have. I'm a little scared that some of my favorites won't get on the list, though. So we'll see.
Yeah, it's quite possible that our favorites won't get the list, since I have 10, and I would say that a lot of mine very possibly are not on your list.
I'd say that I know for a fact I have 2, and I might have 3. I'd say I'm very confident I have 2, and I'm confident that there's 3.
So since I have 10, and I doubt that all 10 are going to get on, and I'll start first this time since you started first last week. I'm going to have to go with one. If I could get rid of some, I'd get rid of those. So I'm going to have to go with one of my favorite ones, that there was this big argument and disagreement over some wine and some Casa de Charmin and the after effects of that. So my number 10 conflict is Bobby versus Courtney over drinking all of the wine. And I just love this conflict. And Bobby is saying, I do not feel bad at all that I drank your wine. I feel bad that I drink other people's wine, but I do not feel bad at all that I drank your wine. That's sort of the culmination to me. That's one of the fights that I always just laugh all the way through, and just Courtney's trying to make it so serious, and Bob Dog is just like, get out of here, fool. So that's what I have as number 10.
That was good. I actually did. That wasn't even on my short list. I totally forgot about it. So, wow. My number 9, I'm going to pick a fight that I actually have it as number 6, but like we said, I'm pretty confident we're not going to overlap too much. And I'm okay with this one being a little bit lower because the actual fight wasn't very long. There was kind of a season-long dislike between these two people. But the fight that you would think of when you think of their conflict was actually fairly short. And that is going to be from Survivor Vanuatu, Twyla versus Eliza, with the famous quote, "You're driving everybody freaking nuts." And Eliza's retort, what's Eliza's retort? Now I can't remember it. The famous, is it, you've been gunning after me since day one. So.
Yeah, that was a good one. It wasn't on my list. I had Twyla on my short list. She had some conflicts with multiple people.
Mm-hmm.
So when we get to our draft, you may see a familiar name over there. But not a bad one at all to put on. So I'm getting rid of those two. That still means I have to get rid of another one. I'm going to get rid of the ones that I know you'll put on there. So I think my next one has to be a rivalry that I enjoyed seeing, and their aggressiveness in challenges, and then the merge came, and they were still sort of sparring with one another. And this is from Survivor Guatemala, Bobby, John, and Jamie.
That was my number 3.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I had that one pretty high.
Yeah, I like that one a lot. It's one of those conflicts that sort of, it like comes out of nowhere. Like all of a sudden they're mad at each other. And we don't really know why. And it continues throughout the rest of the season until Bobby John gets voted out and Jamie goes right after him, and now they're best friends on the jury.
Right.
And it's one of those ones that, it sort of has this weird happy ending that, they both got over it very instantly. But they did not like each other at all. And I think the biggest conflict was when Bobby John was in the first merge immunity challenge, and Jamie decided to sit out and was just, sort of verbally fighting him while he's participating in this challenge, and he's stuffing his face with food.
Wait, you said that's the first conflict?
No. One of their bigger conflicts. Yeah,
well, and there's the famous one with the ball rolling challenge where they're like chest to chest.
Yeah.
Screaming at each other.
Yeah. You have that's the physical one, and then you have the verbal one at the merge immunity challenge.
Right. I'm going to pull one up that doesn't necessarily, it wasn't long and it wasn't really that well explained, but it's one that people remember because there was a phrase that came out of this fight that people still, whenever they think of this character, they think of this phrase. And that is, it's going to be from Survivor Blood versus Water, and the fight between Brad Culpepper and, I was going to say Marissa, but I'll actually say Brad Culpepper versus contestants on Redemption Island.
Yeah, that actually made my top 10, believe it or not. It was like number 10. the list. But yeah, I had Candace and Marissa versus Brad. But pretty much, yeah, Redemption Island people versus Brad.
Yeah, and it's mainly because of Marissa's phrase. We're not going to repeat it here because this is a family podcast. But Marissa's phrase that included an expletive and a finger point and his name, and we'll leave it there.
Yes. All right. So I only have 3 left, which is very sad.
What? We've only picked 4.
I know. I personally only have 3 left.
Oh, to pick. I thought you meant you only have 3 fights left. I'm like, how did you...
No. I'm going to have to eliminate some of mine because I only get 3 picks left.
I know.
I only get 3 picks left. So I think the next one I have to do is one of my favorite fights, and it all started with the queen herself, Sandra, and I call this Fishgate from Survivor Pearl Island, where Sandra, right after Tribal Council, goes and dumps the fish, or trips and dumps them in the forest. She comes back and starts a fight with Johnny Fairplay, and then later they all start yelling and fighting with Krista, blaming her for throwing out the fish, and Sandra just keeps her mouth shut and doesn't say anything.
Yes, a great scene. That was on my short list, but did not make my top 10.
Well, you have number 5.
My number 5, this is one that I know you're not going to have on your list because you did it based off of entertainment value. And this fight was not entertaining. In fact, it was kind of almost sad to watch. But the severity of the fight and the fact that people will remember this fight and remember this character for this fight, I think makes it significant enough that it needs to land on the list. And that's going to be last season, Will versus Shireen in their debacle. It was ongoing. It was very personal. It was very vicious. And like I said, it was not entertaining at all. But it was one that existed and I think deserves to be on the list.
All right. So I have number 4.
Yes.
And I have 3 of them. I hope you will be picking one of these 3.
I have 3 that I feel the same way about. So
I'm going to have to choose this one that I don't know if you necessarily have. And that will be one of the most hilarious fights that started at the beach and then transferred into Tribal Council, and Jeff started getting in, helping start this fight. And this would be Cass versus Tony. And this is the llama language, where Tony starts yelling at Cass for going and spilling the beans about things and saying, "Do I need to speak llama to you?" And that's when he speaks llama. And then we go to Tribal Council and it gets dredged up again, and he's talking more about llamas. So I just die laughing every time I see this fight between the two of them. And it's pretty good how heated Tony gets and how not heated Cass gets.
Yeah, that was number 7 on my list originally.
Okay.
So, my number it'll be number 3. I'm between 2. Again, I have 3, and I'm pretty sure these are going to be our top 3. I hope that you have these 3 as your top 3.
I hope I do.
But I know which one I think should be number 1, so I'm kind of deciding which one should be. I'm going to pick number 3 is going to be one that had some really weird quotes. Like, it's just a weird scene, but really funny, kind of, but also not funny, kind of. I don't know. I'm just going to say it's Ted versus Gandia, and the fact that he was 150 to 200% satisfied with the wife he has.
Yeah, well, did not include on my list because it's just sort of a ugly circumstance of how it all started.
Right.
With the whole grind gate and that. But it's definitely deserving to be on the list, which means, unfortunately, one of mine will not be on the list because I'm assuming you'll pick a different one for number 1. So let me now I have to choose between these 2 awesome ones. But I think the other one was short, so I'm going to have to choose. It's number 2. One of my favorite fights, conflict feuds, is Randy versus Sugar. Whoa!
Oh, crap. You just messed everything up.
I messed everything up. This is where especially at the auction where Randy starts giving the cookies out to the tribe, and Sugar says, "No, I don't want any cookies," and then ends up taking a cookie and giving it to Maddie so that Randy has no cookies. And I just find this argument and fight, and then it culminates, with her tricking, getting Bob to trick him to play an idol, a fake idol, and all this stuff. So I enjoy the fight between Randy and Sugar and the cookies. Like I said, I'm ranking mine on entertainment value, and for me, that was pretty high entertainment.
No, you're fine. It's all good. You just ruined everything.
I just ruined
number one, I think, is pretty clear. I hope this is your number one. I really do. If it's not, then you and I need to have a talk. But this is another fight that occurred that also out of this fight came probably one of the most famous phrases ever uttered in Survivor, and I don't mean that in an exaggerating way, and that is the phrase, "I will always wave my finger in your face, David Johnson." I think this is the best fight Survivor's ever had. I think it's the most iconic. It's entertaining because it's not actually about anything that horribly serious. And the people involved are just very, energetic. And then there's just, people around watching it. And it's just, there's humor, and it's, been building up for a while. And it's totally the type of thing that anyone could see themselves getting in a fight over. You're hungry, you're tired, you're on an island, and someone doesn't want to eat the chicken. I know a lot of people would get in that fight. And so it's relatable. So I think it's a really good example for what the type of thing that should be on our list. I think it's number one, and I hope that you agree.
I have no qualms about that. Now, what did you have? What were you mad? What did I ruin? What didn't get
Rupert versus John.
Rupert versus John. That was on my short list, but it did not make my top 10, mainly because it's sort of a one-sided fight,
That's true.
And it's sort of just Rupert yells at John.
That's true. So what else was on your short list?
My short list. All right. So ones I got rid of, Jatia and Garrett.
Oh yeah.
And that whole race gate. I had Sandra.
just the word Sandra.
Just Sandra. Like her versus John, and I can get loud too. And then her versus Russell with the "I'm against you, Russell," and just all the how very confrontational she was. It was just very entertaining to me, and yet they didn't really care. And the other one, the main one that I was upset that I didn't get was one of the only actual physical fights that I had on the list was Amanda and Danielle from Heroes vs. Villains with Treasure Island. And Colby just sitting there doing nothing while two girls are fighting all around him.
My short list was a little bit longer. I had Rob versus Lex, Shane versus Courtney, Candace versus the entire I2 tribe, Penner versus the entire Raro tribe, Anthony versus Rocky, Dave versus Sharia, Cochran versus Savai, Colton versus Christina, Abby versus everyone, Russell Swan versus God, Natalie versus John Rocker, Rodney versus the Dishes, Christy versus Jenna, Philip versus Steve, and then Rupert versus John.
Yeah, I had a whole bunch of others on my short list. I was just saying my top 10. Was there any others that were in your top 10?
My top 10 were Christy versus Jenna, Philip versus Steve, and Rupert versus John, but all the others made it on.
All right. Yeah, Steve and Philip is another interesting one. I just, going for entertainment value, that is not the most entertaining fight by any means. It makes you just feel awkward. So
give you all the warm fuzzies.
That is why I also did not include Philip versus Brandon Hance.
or Christy versus Jenna was not entertaining.
No, yeah. So our list is number 10, Bobby versus Courtney. Number 9, Twyla versus Eliza. 8, Bobby John versus Jamie. 7, Brad versus Candace and Marissa. 6, Fishgate, sort of everyone versus Krista. 5, Will versus Shireen. 4, Kath versus Tony. 3, Ted versus Gandia. 2, Randy versus Sugar. And number 1, Alicia versus Kimmy. I think it's a pretty wide variety list.
Yeah, I think it's a good list.
Yeah. So there's our top 10. Is there a fight that we didn't talk about that you think we definitely should have mentioned and been on our list? Let us know. You can do that on our Facebook page, David and Jess Survivor. David and Jess Survivor Podcast. Join our group and let us know what you think. So let's get started talking about our topic, fights and conflicts. All right?
Yeah.
So fights and conflicts is something we've had since the very beginning of Survivor.
I mean, day one, right? Richard and Sue on the beach.
Yeah. Richard and Sue, and then on the other tribe you have BB versus everyone.
Yeah.
So this is something that is not new to Survivor by any means. People are always, when you put strangers together, people are going to fight, people are going to have conflicts. Sometimes people handle conflict better than others, and sometimes we get these rare gems of people who can't help cause controversy everywhere they go, like Abby Maria from this season. Can I just say I'm sort of glad now that she did not get voted out in the first episode.
Yeah, I am too.
I think she's bringing a lot of entertainment value to this season. That's for sure. And she, as hard as she's trying, and I think you can tell she's trying, she just can't help it.
I mean, you can see like she wants to be, she wants to play the game, and she wants people to like her. She's dealing with a lot of the same stuff she did last time, like nobody likes her. And so I think we saw a lot of that this week.
Yeah. Well, it's almost like Survivor hurt her self-confidence because she went into Philippines very confident. And she thought everybody liked her. And then she didn't realize until, shortly after the merge that everyone couldn't stand her. I think that really affected her. Definitely in Survivor, and probably also a little in real life as well. And so she's coming in aware that everyone is probably going to get annoyed at her, dislike her. So she's intentionally trying, but she just can't help it.
Yeah.
So, and there's two main types of conflicts in Survivor. The main one is these confrontations. And then the other type, which we saw like on the other tribe, the Bayan tribe, is the passive-aggressive conflict, where you don't actually confront the person, but you go and talk about them to the other people. Like, can you believe what they're doing? Can you believe Steven is thinking that you're looking for idols?
Right.
What a horrible person who lacks honor and integrity and loyalty and courage. He has none of that.
Well, and I think like Andrew's comment was so cocky. Like maybe my story, and what I'm sure happened is that like almost immediately Andrew went to Jeremy, and Jeremy said, "Hey, your story affected me, and so I went to go cry about my wife." But in the confessional, when that hasn't happened yet, and Andrew's like, maybe Steve didn't even think that my story had affected Jeremy so much that he had to go cry to his wife. It just came off as really, really cocky.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and just because someone's a gamer, or talking strategy, does not mean that they don't have courage, honor, integrity, loyalty, or any of that,
Right.
Like he listed like 8 attributes and like how he doesn't have any of them.
None of it.
Which I thought was very extreme. So you also have that passive aggressive, and I would say there's every episode you have a passive aggressive conflict. And I would say most winners deal with conflict the passive aggressive way. Because they're trying to continue to foster a good relationship with people. There's always exceptions to the rule, like Tony, who can still gain people's respect after arguing with them, and Sandra too. Sandra's one that can have conflict with people, but they still like her and respect her after they fight. So,
right,
it can be done, but I think it's harder to balance. But so, what do you think? How to deal? Let's talk how to deal with conflict in Survivor. All right, there's someone.
Yeah.
Let's start with there's someone over there, and you can clearly overhear that they're talking crap about you. There's PG saying all this horrible stuff about you to Shireen and saying how awful you are. What should you do? How should you handle this conflict?
I mean, I feel like the best way is to like wait until tomorrow morning and be like, "Hey, PG, I kind of overheard a conversation last night, and I'm really sorry you feel that way." I do like PG's comment that, we don't have to like each other. That has nothing to do with numbers. But I feel like Abby Maria is not the right person to say it to. Like, I feel like 90% of Survivor players would be like, "Oh, you're right. I hate your face, but we can still play together for at least a little while." But Abby Maria will have none of that.
Yeah, and I would even think, the first thing you should do is whoever they were talking to, have a conversation with that person.
Right. I agree.
And not an angry or an upset, just an actual conversation. And then after that, then, like you said, the day later or something, go up and see if you can try to resolve the conflict. But it has to come, or at least appear to come, from a very authentic, real place, as opposed to, I clearly just want to make amends so that you're not voting against me,
Yeah.
Like, you have to try to be genuine so that they can see, oh, maybe I say, this thing that you were doing was very annoying and upset me, and then you can say, well, I'm sorry for that. I'll try to do better. And I would say, so the worst thing you can do is blame other people, because that's only going to make them mad. So whether or not you are to blame, by taking the blame and responsibility and the conflict, it makes the other person feel better.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that I don't know. I feel like the worst way to handle it is kind of what Abby did. Like, just walking and being like, "Why are you saying stuff about me, yo?"
I'm right here. I can hear everything that you're saying.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and it's probably also, somehow it worked, but it's probably also not good to just go off in a corner and sulk, and have a pity party for yourself.
Yeah, I agree. And I think when we're talking about how to handle things, like, I think Terry did handle that situation really well.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Yeah, he managed to find a way to help resolve the conflict that both, I'm sure, helped a little in camp life, but then also helped a lot at strategic life, and for how he was playing the game. That's for sure. So can you think of anyone who you would say is good at dealing with conflicts on Survivor, someone who did a good job of dealing with them?
This person wasn't necessarily involved in conflicts, but I think he did a good job of kind of putting out fires that other people made, which was Aris from season 12. In fact, I'd say that's probably why he won, because he was able to manage his crazy alliance. Yeah. And the other person I would say is, I think, Trish in Cagayan. She used that phrase, putting out little fires for Tony, and I think that's a really accurate kind of summation of what happened that season.
Yeah, I think those are very two great people who aren't causing the conflicts, but definitely are helping manage and resolve the conflicts and keeping their alliances intact to further themselves in the game. And I'm trying to think, is there anyone who was actually in the conflicts that managed to turn it around and to handle it correctly?
Well, I mean, just based on performance, I mean, Tony, right? Like, Cass voted for him, Trish voted for him.
Yeah.
But that I thought at the time, like, wow, this person is really managing their relationships well. Like, I feel like one of the best things you can do is just not get into conflicts.
Yeah. Yeah. I would agree. I forgot my train of thought. So, any other conflict people that you can think of that were good, successful at managing conflict?
Chris was good at evading conflict. I think Chris from Survivor Vanuatu was good at, like, letting other, even though he maybe should have been involved in conflict.
He weaseled his way out of it.
Yes, he was very good at weaseling his way out of conflict.
What? I'm just laying here.
I'm just laying here in the hammock.
Yeah.
Right. Do you think it's better? So let's say there's a conflict and someone brings up your name because let's say you were talking about voting someone out and someone you were talking with goes to that person. Let's say it's Abby Maria, right? You're talking about voting Abby Maria out and your alliance mate goes to Abby Maria and Abby Maria freaks out and comes to you. Do you admit to it or do you try to play it off?
Oh, this is hard. All right, I would say that you try to throw the blame back at the person who's blaming you and say that they were, trying to force me to say this, and I was just going along with it. I had no intention of going against you. They were trying to, they were talking about getting you out, and I felt like, I'm not gonna say no. I don't know, something like that, where you're half admitting it, but you're blaming why you did it on someone else.
That's fair. That's fair.
Because, I mean, if you just say, yep, I said that, I'm sorry, bad move on my part, I don't think that's going to gain you any favor. And then if you flat out lie and say, they don't know what they're talking about, they're telling you a bullets fly, then they're going to go back to the other person and say, they said you're completely lying, and now you're going to get in more conflict with that other person. So I think... I think the best way is to admit you said it, but the reason why was because of this other person, and that you didn't have any true intention behind your words.
Yeah, I think that's a good strategy. So I know last episode we talked about returning players and kind of brought up some other reality shows. Are there any other reality shows where you feel like conflict, like there are some fights that people need to think about when thinking about conflict in reality TV?
Well, if you want to go in the larger whole of reality TV, I think the best example of conflict and fighting is The Apprentice, because they essentially set it up where the second half of the show, they encourage you and want you to fight. You're fighting for your life. You need to throw the other people out of the bus. You need to say why you're the best and why they screwed up. And Donald Trump would always, even if you had a crappy argument, he would still sometimes keep you because, well, they're a fighter. They're not backing down. I respect that. And then the person who's just sitting there not doing anything will get fired because they don't have enough fire. Which is interesting. So that's a reality show that sort of encourages fighting, and you get ahead in fighting as opposed to the other shows like Survivor. So I find that an interesting comparison.
Yeah, I think Apprentice is a good example. There's also the example, in Big Brother, you have a couple of incidents where people were actually removed from the game for physically fighting. But that show is also one where I think, and there's a lot more fights on that show than there are on like Survivor, for example. And I think part of it is just the time. Like they have so much time between everything. In Survivor, it's 3 days for each phase, and in Big Brother, it's 7. And not only is it 7, but they do everything in the first 3 days, and then you have just like 4 or 5 days to wait for the vote. And so there's just a lot of downtime, and I think that breeds a lot of tension and a lot of fighting.
Yeah. I just remembered what I had forgotten earlier, and I think one of the keys to not letting fights and arguments, if you get in them, affect you, and this may be the number one rule of arguments, is don't make it personal. When you're fighting because of gameplay or something they did in the game, or something, then it's very easy to get out of it. And I think that's what both Tony never made it personal with anyone. I don't think Sandra ever made it that personal with anyone. But it's when you take it personal that things get really ugly and hairy, and I think that's when it really starts to unravel for you.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So if you start calling their family, or if you bring any of their relatives into it, that's a really awful sign. If you start degrading them personally, sort of like what Will did to Shireen. That's a very bad sign. Whereas more of, Tony's yelling at Cass because she blew up, she couldn't keep a secret, which is sort of
Right.
a game thing. And do I have to speak llama to you isn't really bashing her character at all. And if anything is making her laugh during the fight.
There's also, and I know, David, you always roll your eyes when I bring this show up. There is one fight that I have to talk about in the challenge, and that people should watch, I think, because the two people are actually really good friends now, so it's funny now. And that's on the season The Duel 2. Did you watch that season?
Maybe. Memory of what I watched is a little hazy.
So this, I talked this show last time, and if you want like kind of the rundown of what exactly it is, please watch that or listen to that episode. But this is a show called The Challenge. There's one fight. There are a lot of people who are ejected for various things, whether it's physical or whatever. But a lot of times they miss it, or it's something really quick. It's usually just like super testosterone-laden guys who just kind of punch each other and then they're done. But there's one fight that comes almost out of nowhere between a guy named Adam and a guy named CT. And Adam and CT are good friends now, but they get into this fist fight, and it's not funny. It's funny in the same way that like Bruce's medevac in Panama Exile Island is funny, where like that it's not funny, but for some reason the way it plays out is. And CT is this huge monster of a man who just could destroy anyone in a fight. Adam is this tiny little, he's maybe 5'6" guy who has no muscle mass and is really bad at these things. And to make it even funnier, that night they were having a pajama party. And so CT isn't wearing pajamas, but Adam is not only physically much weaker than CT, and so it looks like David fighting Goliath, but Adam is also wearing like a onesie footy pajamas with it's like a poker pajamas, right? Like with cards and stuff on them. And so it's just really funny to watch David and Goliath go after a fight and go get in a fight, and David is wearing footy pajamas. So that's one fight I always remember when I think of that show as well.
Yeah, and it brings me something to talking about reality TV. A lot of the one thing I love about Survivor is that the conflict is very authentic. And some reality shows, the conflict you can tell is very forced, and it seems like very forced conflict. I think that's one thing with the challenge is sometimes the conflict seems a little forced. Also, in the challenge, they give them a ridiculous amounts of alcohol, just so that they do fight with each other, which always did not float my boat. It's like I'd rather have an authentic fight than people wailing on each other, sort of a thing. Not that the one fight you mentioned wasn't good, but in general,
yeah, I would agree. I would usually agree with you. But when one person's wearing footy pajamas, like
yes, no, I agree with you. But I do like that, and I talked about like I ranked my top 10 on entertainment value, and I do think there's some times where conflict and fights can be very entertaining to watch, and other times it can be very painful and cringeworthy to watch. And again, I think it all comes back to the more personal it is, the harder it is to watch. Such as the Steve versus Philip Shepard in Redemption Island, and how it suddenly got turned into this race thing, and I don't think it was, at least on Steve's part, I honestly don't think he ever intended it that way. But when you get into that type of conflict, it really puts a damper on the season. Or pretty much any of Colton's comments during One World, He got very, very personal and very ugly. And so it's those types of conflicts that are not as entertaining to watch for me. And for me, another one was Brandon. Well, to me, that's just a really awful episode to watch. And it's just so
Yeah.
painful to see this guy who's clearly struggling. You know, he's having some sort of mental turmoil. And to see how he lashes out like that is just not very fun.
Yeah, I agree.
Would you say there is any other things that makes conflict good or entertaining to watch versus conflict not entertaining to watch?
I don't know. I think that a lighthearted group of people, like, if it especially like on social media afterwards, can really make or break it. Like, if it seems like they get along now, I don't know. I always like to think that if people get along now, then the conflict wasn't that bad, and I can feel better enjoying it. And sometimes you don't always have that opportunity, but
yeah, you always wish that no matter what conflicts happen, people forgive and move on.
Right.
You know, and like we say, people say on Survivor all the time, you don't necessarily have to forget, but just, you know, move past it, be civil to each other. And I think that's what put a damper a lot of times on reunion shows is when Jeff brings up, hey, how's it going between you two? And then they're still fighting, you know,
Right.
which is never as fun as, you know, we had a conflict in the game. I prefer the Bobby, John, Jamie approach. We're out of the game. We're cool, you know. We left it on the field, sort of a thing. But let's talk. We could talk about a little conflict or fighting. We had the immunity challenge of this past episode, and it was interesting just to see. The beginning part of the challenge ended up being pretty much irrelevant, but just how the teams handled, you know, having two people do the puzzle and everyone else being there watching, and just the chaos, especially at Takeo, that happened with everyone screaming at each other and this conflict even within the challenge of who's going to do it right. And we saw both teams switch out to their members quite a few times at least.
Yeah, I think this puzzle was really hard, and we saw exactly why that was, because the opposite tree thing.
It had to be a mirror image of each other, not same direction.
Right, and it made sense when you saw it. Like, it had to continue in, and I think that was probably an intentional move by the producers. But I thought for a while that Spencer and Takeo was going to get it, but
I was really hoping that they didn't. I'm still rooting for Stephen Fishback to go as far as he can.
This is probably the best thing that could have happened to him, I think.
So, and as soon as I saw that Jeff sort of got control and was sticking back with the old school, I was really happy. I was okay with them losing again. I got scared right at the end of the immunity challenge, right before commercial, and they ended with Jeff Varner saying how ironic it was that those two were doing the puzzle and one of them two are going home. I was like, oh, usually when someone says someone's going home right before the opposite happens.
Right.
So I was getting nervous there, but then it ended up being one of them, which was odd. I thought usually the editors always try to, you know, they make it obvious, oh, this person's obviously going home for the first 75%, and then right after that challenge, you know, when you come back for commercial break, then they like to switch it, and oh, it goes crazy, and this person goes home.
Right. I thought this episode had a really weird lead up to Tribal Council. Right, like there wasn't much misdirection. It was very somber. And there was that weird scene. I thought this scene was so weird, but really, really great. And I'm so happy they included it. The scene where Shireen and Spencer try to convince Wu to go with them. And Wu just kind of looks at them and says, no, you haven't talked to me for 6 days. And now finally, when you need something, you want to come to me. Like, I thought that was an amazing editing choice to add that scene in there.
Well, yeah, and I think it was very good on Wu place where conflict could arise. They
Mm-hmm.
could be, it's very easy. They're gonna single out Wu, say, "Hey, you need to come with us. These people are gonna turn on you." And he stood his ground, but he did it in a very respectful manner. He wasn't like yelling at them, "You idiots! Why haven't you talked to me beforehand? There's no chance in heck I'm gonna, go with you guys." But instead, he's like, you've never really come to me before this, so I don't think I'm going to go against my alliance. So I thought he handled it very well, and I like that he was straightforward with them and said, no, I thought that
Yeah,
was good.
I agree.
Talk about some more conflict that didn't even air. Apparently, right as Shireen was getting voted out and she went to go get her torch, she told everyone that Terry Dietz had the hidden immunity idol and that she saw him burying it and all this stuff and was trying to drop a bomb, I guess, right as she was leaving, and was sharing all this stuff right before her torch got snuffed. So I wonder if that will have any implications. My guess is that it doesn't, since they didn't show it in the episode. You think if it was a major thing. But it's interesting how she was even trying to cause conflict, Shireen, right at the end, and leave on that note.
Yeah, that, and I also heard that she actually, like, the Varner going after Shireen and Spencer thing wasn't out of nowhere. Apparently, Shireen was actually kind of gunning for Varner. Is the other thing.
Which is probably why she got out instead of Spencer, because I think Spencer was the original target.
Yeah. Were you surprised that they split the vote 4-5?
No, I thought they would. I thought it was surprising that they never mentioned it before Tribal Council, because usually they'll show someone talking about how they're going to split the votes.
Yeah.
But I was thinking that as we were getting closer and closer to Tribal Council, I was like, they're probably going to split the votes, and that's why they say they have to vote for each other and all this stuff.
And that's the thing that's why I ask, because that never makes sense to me when they're like, we have to vote for each other, and I'm like, it's 7-2, like whoever they pick. And then now that vote splitting is a thing, it actually does make sense, because if Spencer doesn't vote for Shireen, it's 4-4-1, and Shireen probably goes home, but you just don't want to.
Yeah. So that was an interesting editing choice to me. But yeah, we saw last night was the crying episode.
Yeah, there was quite a bit of crying.
We had, the heartfelt life story, which I thought, he's breaking up. Did she die or something? Is this like is this gonna be a horrible ending? And then it's just, I love her.
Right.
Not to take anything away. I admire how much he loves his wife and the great relationship that they have. But the editing of it set it up like he was telling this tragic tale.
Right. No, it really did seem like that, and the only reason, like, I know from something that his wife isn't dead, and so I was kind of surprised, but I was like, he must just really like her, I guess,
Yeah. But talk about someone who's not causing conflict is Monica, because they don't even show her.
Or Sierra. Or Kimmy.
Kimmy got a tiny bit this episode. They've still shown her saying a line or two.
That's true.
Not a confessional, but they show her saying a line or two, at least. Unlike this episode, I don't think Sierra or Monica had a line at all.
No, they didn't. Which isn't a death knell yet. But, give it a couple episodes and it could be.
Yeah. Well, and I think right now in Tribes of 10, people are going to hide. When it gets to 3 tribes of 6, I think you're going to see people can't stand out or can't hide anymore. People are going to stand out. And this could start a whole new batch of controversy.
Yeah. So let's talk about that then, since we're nearing the end of the episode, and we should maybe talk a little bit more about sort of this episode as a whole, or what's going to happen in the future. Who does this help and who does this hurt? I think there's two obvious people who it helps.
Helps Steven, helps Spencer.
Yep, those are the two obvious ones.
It hurts. The rest, it all depends on the tribe thing, but it could hurt Joe, Jeremy, or Jeremy. Joe, Jeremy, Savage, yeah. It could hurt Jeff Varner. I could see this being really bad for him. It could hurt Terry. There's some people where I don't really think it will hurt them. I don't think it will hurt Monica unless she's on a tribe of alpha males. You know, let's say it's Monica with Jeremy, Tasha, Joe, and Savage, you know, and they're like, well, we're going to get rid of the weak person, you know.
Right.
So that's the only way. But for a lot of people, her and Sierra, I think couldn't necessarily help, couldn't necessarily hurt. They're going to be in a fine position. Kelly Wentworth is going to be in a fine position either way.
Now, do you know how they're going to do idols?
Well, I'd assume there's going to be one on the New Beach and one still on the Beyond tribe.
So just whoever gets put on the Takeo tribe is just going to be out of luck.
I would think so. I mean, I don't know anything for sure, but
that was my guess as well.
But I think this could be very harmful for Cass, because now, you know, if she doesn't have any other of those targets in her group, then she's an obvious target. So that could be bad for her. So I would say for the majority of people, it's not a good thing.
Yeah. Well, and Cass is also an interesting situation because it seems like Cass has been doing a good job of making inroads at Bayon. Yeah. And if she gets put with a bunch of people like all who are from Takeo, like all of that work is erased and she has to start from scratch again.
Yeah. So, well,
but I think it's a really interesting twist. I'm excited to see how it plays out.
Yeah, will definitely be interesting. Maybe next week our topic will have to be tribe swaps.
Ooh, good one. Good one.
And looking at that. So stay tuned for that. But before we let you go, it's time for our Survivor Draft. All right?
Yes.
I have 20 people right here, Jeff. 20 people who maybe cause quite a bit of conflict and controversy wherever they go. All right? So okay. I'm going to give you the names, and then we're going to go and do our draft 1, 2, 2, 1, 1, 2, 2, and so on and so forth. We're getting our group of 10 conflicting people to make an awesome tribe. All right? Okay. So are you ready? Here's the first one. I'm ready. Alicia Calloway, Kimmy Kappenberg, both from Survivor Australia. Two of the original major conflicts. We have them in there. We have, from this season, Abby Maria.
Okay.
Crazy guy himself, Shane Powers.
Okay.
We have the one and only Twyla Tanner. We have Mr. Wonderful Randy Bailey. We have, from Survivor Guatemala, we have Jamie Newton. We have the one, the only Johnny Fairplay. We have the queen herself, Sandra Diaz Twine. We have freaking crocodiles, Judd Sargent.
Judd Sargent.
All right, so that's the first 10. Now we move on to Chuck E. Cheese herself, Stacey Powell. Believe that. Now we get to some not so nice people. We have Yasmin Giles.
Okay.
We have Ben from Survivor Samoa.
Okay, Ben Browning.
Ben Browning, yes. We have Shannon Elkins from Nicaragua.
Okay.
We have James Rocky Reed from Survivor. Dave Cruiser from Survivor China. The one, the only Chaos Cass. We have also from Cagayan, Jatia.
Jatia!
We have the infamous Brandon Hance.
Of course.
And we have Suhawk. So these are our 20 people. Let's do. You have to do 5 men and 5 women because I
Okay.
think I'm pretty sure I did 10 of each. And would you like to go first or second?
I'll go first.
All right. Always like to go first. Sounds good.
I'm not even going to try on this one. I'm just going to pick the 10 lolsiest people I can. So number 1, I want Shane Powers, and you can't have him.
All right, Shane. All right. I'm going to choose Twyla. And I'm going to choose Sandra.
Okay. I will take Judd and Sue.
Judd and Sue. All right. I'm going to take Cass. And I'm going to take. Give me some Randy. I'll get some Randy.
Okay. I'll take Abby. And I will take. I'll take Abby, and I'll take Ben Browning.
Oh, going for Ben. All right. I'm going to take Rocky. And I'm going to take Stacy.
Okay. Now, can I get a rundown of who's left, just so I know?
Who's left? We have Alicia. We have Kimmy. We have Jamie. We have Fairplay. We have Brandon, Jatia, Dave Cruiser, Yasmin, and Shannon.
Okay. I think I'm going to have to go with Fairplay and Brandon Hance.
Is that all your guys?
I think I have one more. Nope. That is all of them.
All right. So I only have one girl left, so I might as well pick that now. So I think I'll pick Alicia. Maybe we can win some challenges.
Who needs challenges?
And so then my only choice is the remaining guys. So I'll pick Dave for now.
Well, and that sets the rest of our lineup, doesn't it?
Yeah. So you have Kimmy and Jatia.
Good. Although I think it is kind of a travesty that Kimmy and Alicia aren't on the same tribe.
Oh, you also have Yasmin.
Right.
And then I have Shannon. And who's my last one? Oh, Jamie. I have Jamie. All right, so let's look at these tribes. So in your tribe, you have Shane Powers, Judd, Sue, Abby, Ben, Fairplay, Brandon, Kimmy, Jatia, and who's the last one? Oh, Yasmin. So
Yeah.
who's getting conflicts?
Who's what?
Who hates each other on your tribe?
Ben and Yasmin.
For sure, they're gonna get in fights. Who else is gonna get in a fight?
Shane and everyone.
I could see Shane and Abby going at it.
Oh, good one. Yeah, I could see that too.
I can see Abby being the new Courtney. I see Fairplay actually just starting all the fights and making everyone hate everyone.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea of what's actually going to happen.
And Kimmy actually looks like the sane one in your group, which is. Really
I don't know that Kenny's insane. I think that she's just like she just loves chickens.
Like she's like the nice one in your group. You will officially have 0 rice in this tribe.
0 what?
Rice. 0 rice.
Because I have Brandon and Jatia.
Yeah. One will dump half and the other will dump the other. Every time you will have no rice whatsoever.
And if they give us beans at the beginning of the game, they're both going to look at it and just be like, what is this?
All right, let's go over to my tribe. Where we see conflict arising here. I could see Stacy and Randy not really liking each other for some reason.
Yeah.
Oh well, Shannon's gonna be making everyone hate him.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, Shannon doesn't do a lot of favors for himself.
I see Stacy and Cass making an alliance, though.
I could see that. I think Sandra's the sanest one on your tribe.
Yeah. And Alicia's pretty sane, too.
That's true. She just gets hot when other people get hot.
Yeah. She doesn't want to do Survivor again. And if she ever agreed to do it again and she got put on this tribe, I think she would quit. She's like, really? I didn't want to do this that much in the first place. You got to be kidding me. Who can Rocky pick on? No one.
Who's
really.
the young? Is there a young male who's not quite masculine on your tribe?
We have Jamie, but he's pretty masculine.
Yeah, I would agree.
And Dave.
Yeah.
I don't. There's no answer. I don't know. I think I have controversial people on my tribe, but I don't know. There's not going to be huge feuds, I don't think.
Right.
I think everyone will just be annoyed with everyone.
Being all the time.
No. But all right, so that's an interesting fantasy draft. So that would be a very who wins this season, Jeff?
Probably Sandra.
Yeah, probably Sandra. This is our 3-peat. They essentially made this for Sandra to win.
Right.
Yeah. So, and who has the best shot on your tribe? Fair play, Shane.
I would probably say fair play. Yeah.
Yeah. So, now we have created the Ultimate Conflict season. Let us know what you think about this and about anything that we talked about. You can do that on our Facebook group, David and Jeff Survivor Podcast, or on our website, survivorpodcast.blogspot.com.
Yeah, and make sure you hit the subscribe button on iTunes so that way the podcast shows up on your computer every week.
Yeah. So we thank you guys so much for watching and or listening. We'll be back next week to talk about a brand new topic, all about Survivor past and present. Are you okay, Jeff?
Yeah, I'm waving goodbye as we give our sign off.
Yes. So be sure this weekend, go and check out Zoe's Lobster Shack. Very delicious.
Yeah, it is.
Be sure to try that Snickers pie. It's the best. So thank you guys so much. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.